Hello and welcome to another video. My name is Boxiest, and today we're going to continue the What If series. What if events had gone differently? And in this What If, we're going to change the history of Cobra Kai. What if Axel never existed during the events of Cobra Kai? So in this timeline, Axel will never be born, and Sensei Wolf is still on the Iron Dragons. Sensei Wolf would train Wing from a young age, and he would train him to be a champion. And in this timeline, Wing would have a similar skill set like Axel did in the original timeline, and he would be the Iron Dragons champion, and the events of Cobra Kai would continue. Terry Silver would still buy out the Iron Dragons, and those events would stay the same. Miyagi would still make it to the Seikai Taikai, and they would be surprised to see Kreese and Cobra Kai there, and they would be heartbroken to see Tori and Cobra Kai. The Seikai Taikai would continue. Robbie would still want to talk to Tori, but Tori still wouldn't want to talk to the Miyagi. Quan would still be challenging the other dojos to a kicking competition, and Robbie would still accept Quan's challenge, so those events would stay the same. Eventually, the Captain's War Challenge would begin. Miyagi would be on defense, and they would still be doing Protect the Egg, but Tori and Quan would still want to go after the Miyagi. Quan would still go after Robbie, and Robbie and Quan would still fight. Devin and Dimitri would still go down. Robbie would still be distracted by Tori, so Quan would still take Robbie down, and Miyagi would be out, so only the Cobra Kais and the Iron Dragons would remain. The rest of the Iron Dragons would still walk off, so it would be Wing and Zara, and those events would stay the same, so the Iron Dragons would win. The Seikai Taikai would continue. Miyagi would still have to knock the other dojo off the platform, but Miyagi wouldn't do so well. The Iron Dragons would fight the West End Warriors, and Zara and Wing would be on the platform. Miyagi would still have to fight out Dublin Thunder. Robbie and Sam would still start off, and they would fight their opponents, but Robbie would still be distracted by Tori, so he would still be knocked off. So Devin would join Sam on the platform. Devin and Sam would still fight their opponents. The fight would continue, and Sam would still be knocked off, so Hawk would join Devin, and much like in the original timeline, Devin would still sacrifice herself to save Hawk, so Dimitri would join Hawk on the platform. Hawk and Dimitri would still fight their opponents, and Dimitri would still knock Hawk off the platform, and he would also be knocked off. Miguel would finish the fight, so Miyagi would win, and much like in the original timeline, Carmen would still be rushed to the hospital, and Johnny and Miguel would have to leave, so Johnny would call for Kenny to take Miguel's place. The Miyagi students would still go explore Barcelona, and they would still be at the tapas bar. This is when the Cobra Kais would show up, and Sam would still go outside to get some air. Quan would still want to mess with Robbie, so Quan and Robbie would start to have a rivalry. Zara would notice the connection between Tori and Robbie, and she would still want to mess with Tori, so those events would stay the same. In this timeline, Sam wouldn't run into Axel, instead she would run into Wing, and she would still compliment him on his kata, but unlike Axel, Wing wouldn't have an interest in Sam, so Wing and Sam would go their separate way. And meanwhile in the States, Amanda would still try to convince Kenny to go to Barcelona, but Kenny still wouldn't want to go, and Kenny would still think that Anthony put laxatives in his water. Eventually Anthony would apologize to Kenny, and Devin would confess to Kenny that it was her that put laxatives in his water, so Kenny would decide to go. Eventually Miguel, Johnny, and Kenny would come back to Barcelona, and Kenny would still take Devin's place. The team matches would continue. Miyagi would still fight Furia de Pantera, and the fight would stay the same. Dimitri and Hawk would still be arguing, and they would still land a point on Dimitri. Sam and Maria would continue to fight, and much like in the original timeline, Sam would land a point on Maria. The fight would continue. Hawk would continue the fight, and in this timeline, Hawk would tag in Kenny. Kenny would fight, and he would manage to land a point, and he would tag in Miguel. Miguel would finish the fight, and in this timeline, Miyagi would beat Furia de Pantera, and during the next team match, Miyagi would fight Redentores, and Miguel would still start off. He would use a combination of offense and defense, and he would tag in Robbie, and Robbie would land the first point. Robbie would tag in Kenny, and much like in the original timeline, Kenny would get 2 points, and they would still advance in their matches. Miyagi would still fight Cobra Kai, and Robbie and Tori would still start off. Robbie would still be distracted, and he would still tag in Sam. Sam and Tori would fight, but Tori would tag in Quan, and he would manage to land a point on Sam. Quan would still tag out, and Sam would tag in Miguel, and he would get the first point. Yoon and Dimitri would continue the fight, and much like in the original timeline, Hawk, Kenny, and Dimitri would team up to get the point on Yoon, and Hawk would once again tag in Miguel. Miguel and Quan would fight, but Quan would manage to land a point on Miguel, so Miguel would tag in Robbie. Robbie and Quan would fight, and that fight would stay the same. Robbie would land the final point on Quan, so Miyagi would beat Cobra Kai in this timeline, and they would be eliminated. Tiger Strike would still be eliminated for cheating during the tournament, so Cobra Kai would be let back in. The semi-finals would begin. Quan and Diego would still fight, but Quan would still defeat him. Zara and Maria would fight, but Zara would still defeat Maria. And Robbie would fight Wing in the boys semifinals. And during the first round, Robbie would still land the first point. Everyone would be surprised, and they would begin to cheer. This would make Wing mad, and he would begin to adapt. Sensei would be mad that Wing got hit, and he would want Wing to get more aggressive. So the fight would continue, and they would still each get 5 more points. So Sensei would still want Wing to break Robbie's leg. So Wing would still try to break Robbie's leg, but in this timeline, Robbie's leg wouldn't be caught. So Robbie and Wing would continue to fight, and in this timeline, Robbie would knock out Wing. Everyone in the crowd would cheer, and Meowito would celebrate. Those events would continue. Sam and Tori would fight, and they would both use a combination of offense and defense. The match would be close, so in this timeline, Tori would defeat Sam, so she would advance to the finals. Tori and Zara would fight, and Zara would still get the upper hand in the first round, and she would still be ahead by 5 points. Tori would still be distracted, and she wouldn't be focused, so the fight would resume. Tori would continue fighting, but Tori still wouldn't be fighting properly, and Zara would continue landing points on Tori, and she would still get another 5 points. The final round would begin. Tori and Zara would face off. Tori would try to land some hits on Zara, but Zara would be able to counter Tori's attacks, and in this timeline, Zara would get a knockdown, so Zara would defeat Tori in this timeline. Zara would still be the girls' Saikai Taikai World Champion. The boys' finals would begin. Robbie and Quan would fight. Quan would be fighting with offense and aggression, and he would score a couple points in the first round. Kreese would want Quan to show no mercy, and he would remind Quan of what Master Kim taught him. And during the second round, Quan would start to get even angrier, and he would continue fighting with aggression, and he would get some points on Robbie. Robbie would be focused in this timeline, and he would get a knockout against Quan, so Robbie would once again defeat Quan. Robbie would be declared the boys' champion of the Saikai Taikai, and Robbie would be happy. Even though Robbie won, the Iron Dragons would still win by overall points, and those events would carry on. Robbie and Tori would still get their career opportunity for Micon branding, and those events would stay the same. Even though Miyato didn't win the Saikai Taikai, they would still get many students, and Daniel and Johnny would continue to run Miyagi-Do. And that is where I'm going to end this what if. Thank you guys for watching. What do you guys think would have happened if Axel never existed during the events Cobra Kai? Let me know in the comments below. YouTube lets me know that the majority of you are not subscribed, so if you guys could subscribe, that would be much appreciated. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on post notifications. And I'll see you guys next time.